going to start off this Steelhead Nymph with a TMC 2457 in a size 6. Go a little bit smaller, but it's a pretty good size for your typical summer steelhead. I'm going to use a black nickel bead in a 4mm or 5/32, which is about one size smaller than you typically use with a size 6. Once you get that secured in the vise, start some black 6/0 thread or similar just beyond the eye of the hook. And we're just going to lay down just enough so we can put down our lead. I do it a little bit differently than most people. So I'm going to break off some lead wire, and I'm going to shove that up underneath behind the bead. Once we have that in there, then I'm just going to secure with a half hitch. So I put that over on my Norvise post, and then I'm just going to spin on the lead. Can't spin it on very far with these without working at it, and I just finish by wrapping it on. You can wrap it on a good distance down around the bend of the hook, as this is going to help form the basis for your body. I'm just going to wrap over this with thread, but you could use flexi floss or some kind of floss to save yourself some time. Sometimes I keep it spooled up on another bobbin to fill in those gaps. So now I'm just going to cover the lead and build up a nice ramp up onto it, so I have a nice contoured body. I'm just going to move up and back. Again, if you have some kind of other filler or thicker floss-like material, this can go a lot quicker. Once I have that done, I'm going to go and I'm going to tie on a piece of small ultra wire in black. This is going to be our rib. I start that at the head, and that just gives me something to keep the individual thread wraps when I'm dubbing from going down in between the lead wire wraps. I'll wrap that all the way down to where I'm going to start. And the next material I'm going to use is some green Edge Bright. So those of you familiar with a lot of the green rockworm patterns that use Edge Bright wrapped, we're actually going to build a shell back with this. Again, just getting that body tapered so that it'll look nice when we're dubbing on our body. So I'm going to cut off a piece somewhere between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch, just so it builds a nice shell. And then I'm going to trim off and create sort of a tapered cut at the rear of the Edge Bright, and that's what we're going to tie in to the back so it tapers up the body. I'm going to move backwards and just try and capture just a piece of it so that it lays flat. I'm also going to use that to help continue to build the back taper of my body. You can see that starts to make a really nice transition and a consistent body size. Once I have that, I'm going to get some dubbing. I'm going to wax my thread, and I'm going to use some bright green dubbing. It doesn't have to be anything specific. You could use something without quite as much shine in it. Again, this is a steelhead fly, so we're not looking to make something that looks anything like the real world, but I think this is a really buggy looking fly that it just fishes incredibly well, and it's pretty dense and heavy. It drops to the bottom. I just don't have any confidence in those skinny little green rockworms. I'd also say there's a variation. You can do this in orange for an October caddis. Have a radioactive October caddis. That's pretty much what it looks like. So we're just going to build the body up here, keep adding more wax and more dubbing as we go along. You don't want a super loose body here, so I tend not to brush it out. And we're just going to continue to move forward, adding more dubbing as we go along. we're adding that dubbing, we always want to just spin it one direction. We don't want to twist our fingers both ways. Just twist it one way, let your fingers up, and then keep twisting it on like you're trying to roll it onto the thread. And just take our time and keep adding more until we get the right taper. I'm a huge fan of getting the underbody taper correct instead of trying to fix it with the dubbing. So that way you're just consistently putting on the same thickness of a dubbing noodle. And we're just going to continue to move all the way forward. We just have a little bit of a space up front, probably about a 1/4 inch. Again, I save my work a lot, as I call it. Just put that 1/2 inch in there to protect everything. I'm going to pull it forward, pull it nice and tight, and then kind of encourage it to wrap around the body. This is pretty thick, heavy stuff. And so I'm just going to lay down a couple of good tight wraps. I'm going to pull it up and continue to cinch that down until it's nice and tight. And then I'll wrap it forward and secure it. Make any adjustments that I need to, and then I'll trim it off. And I'm leaving a little excess there so it gives me a nice flat profile that I can use for my next steps here. Now I'll wind on my rib. You can do it sparse. I've done it sort of both ways, and I really find that I like the look of adding quite a few tight ribs on this. Plus I think it just makes it a more durable fly. It's the fly that you're going to be dragging along the bottom. One variation that I've done on this is to draw a black stripe up the rear of the shell back. Again, not really an accurate representation of a green rockworm, but it does give a little bit of a contrast. I'm not going to do it in this pattern. Once we have the wire up to the head, we're just going to helicopter that off. I like to pull up on it while I'm helicoptering it. It seems to break off cleaner and faster. Next step is we're going to tie in a couple of wing buds. And to do this, we're going to use a starling skin. We're just going to find 2 similar feathers there, and we're going to strip them down to the base so that we don't have a big wide fiber. And we're just going to pinch that on that other side, do a nice loose wrap, and then just pin it down. Adjust it, you can pull it up. These are pretty delicate little fibers, so don't pull too hard or put too many wraps before you do that. Get it sitting just right. And we're going to do the opposite on the other side. I like to turn the vise sideways to do that. Again, find that matching feather. Put it on the other side, press it down. Check to make sure that everything's sitting correctly, and then wrap it forward. It's a pretty big fly, so you get a lot of forgiveness in creating a big head, and it helps lay your foundation for the final step. So the next step is we're going to put on some black col de canard, and I'm using a CDC tool that I found at the Caddisfly. I really like it. Just allows me to group up a bunch of feathers together. It's just a triple fork. I don't know exactly what it was called. I think it's just called a CDC tool. But you kind of stick the tip down in there until it sticks, until it captures it, and then you just roll all the way down the feather. And you can kind of stroke things back. This just gives you something that you can gather a bunch of feathers together with. And then from there I kind of grab them and pull them all back so I have a nice group. You could also do this by stripping the CDC off. It's just a little bit more of a manageable way to do it. I'm just going to hold it down underneath, a couple of soft wraps. That's going to form the legs, and I'll trim off the excess there in front. I'll just wrap that down and clean it up. Now we're ready for our final step, so once we get those adjusted, again here nothing too specific. I'm using some black UV caddis dubbing for Spirit River. You could also just use some just straight black. You could use some Angora. I like a little bit of a tighter head here. It's not critical. You could even use ostrich. All about durability on these flies, because sometimes you'll be fishing one for an entire trip of 3 days. Sometimes you'll fish one for 5 minutes. Just kind of depends how long it takes you to lose it, but I like to build them durable. Now we're just going to build a nice tight head that's just slightly bigger than the rest of that body. Again, I'm not going to pick this out. That'll happen all on its own. This pattern should have a lot of movement in the water with the CDC and those wing buds. It's got some good UV color to it. Should be nice and bright in the water. You could probably build a pink one of these for wintertime fishing on the coast. It'd fish great. Just make sure you get that head up nice and tight. You don't need to put a ton of wraps behind that bead. Once I get everything adjusted here, then I'm just going to do my whip finish, and then I'll be done. Hope you enjoyed this pattern. Tie up a couple dozen of them. I think it's going to be a killer.